All right, welcome everybody to Navigating Now. My name is Norm Ralph, co-founder here at Thoughtium, and this is my first time in the captain's chair. So just thrilled to be here and just an opportunity to create the space with you all. As we're getting ready to get just warmed up, just want to remind everybody every Thursday, we're here supporting Navigating Now. It's an opportunity for us to build community and to be able to really tell stories and just share in the journey and the experience together. As we're getting just even warmed up, I wanted to have a chance just to acknowledge our Navigating Now community. We've just really just been inspired and absolutely felt connected as we've built community over the last 2 years. You know, as I look back to this being an early concept to how this has really become a true community of connectedness. And that's through storytelling, that's through unique collaborations. And it's our opportunity like this to be able to step up outside of the work and to really have an opportunity to be connected. And so just absolutely thrilled to be sitting here today, like I said, in the captain's chair for the first time. Also wanted to take this as an opportunity to acknowledge Anthony, who really from the beginning, this was his vision of this platform. We couldn't have anticipated how this was going to play out. But again, we knew that team members were looking for community and connection in unique ways. And this pandemic has just challenged us in so many. What this has transformed in is it initially was an opportunity for us to talk about those challenging topics, to maybe break down some of those barriers and share some of the real. And what this is now transformed into, in my opinion, is an opportunity for us to look from abundance and service and ways for us to really support each other. And so when I look at 2022, for me, it's about pouring into this community. It's really an opportunity for me to really look at Navigating Now, not just as every Thursday we're here, but this is now my community and our community. So again, just really appreciate everybody's commitment, their ability to step into the conversation, and just really excited to be here with our guest today. Also wanted to just welcome our community that's tuning in on YouTube, especially our LinkedIn community and our Facebook community. We just continue to get such engagement both live and post the 3 o'clock session. Again, we just thank you for showing up. So with that, what I'd like to do is I would like to officially welcome to the table today, Kevin Lobo. Kevin Lobo is a managing director at Analytics 8, a firm here in Chicago that is just quickly growing and emerging. And this topic couldn't be more timely. As we think about the workforce and just where it's going, where people are looking at the prioritization of work and what it means and how they can make quick decisions and big decisions. Not only Kevin and his career, but also their firm can really support and enable some of those big decisions and big conversations. So with that, I want to welcome Kevin to the table.
Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, really excited for the conversation today.
Great. Well, Kevin and I had a chance to get connected this week, and for me, it just was such a reminder about how we all travel similar paths, and there's just so many different ways that we can be connected. That concept of a shared experience. And as Kevin was just sharing a bit about his career path, a little bit about what's gotten him here, and even just the real opportunity and responsibility in front of him, there just felt like there was so much that could be shared that's well beyond data and is well beyond maybe his existing role. So I'm excited today. We're really going to cover a couple of things. First is just an opportunity to hear about Kevin's story, hear about how that story really supports and complements the growing business at Analytics 8. We're then going to transition in the context of intrapreneurship. Again, the business landscape is changing. A lot of team members are starting to ask themselves, like, what would it be like to maybe reimagine my responsibilities, my ability to be a builder, creator, entrepreneur. And there's so much about intrapreneurship that I think can be really rich within a business context. So excited to talk about some of the real challenges and learnings that come from that space. And then ultimately, as we think about your business and even you as you're emerging in your career, how do you make data-driven or informed decisions? And so it's becoming more important than ever, particularly in a dynamic environment. The marketplace is changing, your customers are changing. How do you really look at data as a differentiator, and how do you make an informed decision, regardless of whether you identify as a data person or potentially you're a senior leader who's looking to use that data to make those big decisions? So again, excited to unpack that. And so with that, Kevin, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your story and how you'd like to maybe even identify yourself. So beyond being a managing director, beyond being one of the leaders at Analytics 8, How do you identify what sits at the center of what really drives you and what really makes you light up?
Well, I think it's been kind of a curious road getting here into my current role. I think, I guess a little bit of background about myself. So I am a managing director at Analytics 8. We're a data analytics consultancy headquartered here in Chicago. So I've been with the firm for about a little over 7 years and have been in data analytics for probably about 11, 12 years at this point. It's really funny because data analytics is a really popular industry right now. Everybody's kind of talking about the impact and value that you can drive with data. And I guess one of the questions that I always get is like, how did you end up in this industry? And I always kind of joke that it's by complete accident. I was a finance major as an undergraduate. I graduated right into the teeth of the Great Recession. I was planning on being like an investment banker, working in finance, and that was quickly erased. Entry-level jobs just didn't exist at that point. And the only reason I really ended up in analytics, to be perfectly honest with you, is a friend of mine from college reached out, asked me if I wanted to interview at a software startup that he was at. And at that point, I was like, I need a job. So sure, I'll definitely come in. It was one of the most impactful decisions that I ever made, both personally and professionally. It really kind of set the tone of my career. It's where I met my wife, who actually started on the same day in the same position as me. So it's been quite the journey to where I'm at. I think when I first started out, I really did not know anything about data analytics. And it was kind of a lot of learning on the job initially when I first came into the industry and just kind of picking up concepts. So it's kind of wild to see, from where I started, 11, 12 years ago to where I am now, just kind of developing in a way that I never really imagined. I didn't know that this was a career path when I was first coming out of college. And now just seeing like how ubiquitous data analytics is in the industry. Everybody's kind of putting the emphasis on making data-driven decisions. It's kind of unique to have that seat at the table right now.
And maybe just talk a little bit about what sat at the center for you of just really lighting you up in this space. So as you're starting to learn and you didn't even know that this was available, what was maybe the constant as you look at even some of the exposure you have from college to post-college in that first career to you then starting to shift into this space? Because it maybe wasn't as much about the functional knowledge or space, but there was probably something that was common that you could almost be the thread throughout your career to this point.
Yeah, it was this weird little middle ground that kind of developed where there's the technical implementation side where you're kind of like rapidly prototyping, building applications and things of value for your customers. But there's also kind of the project management aspect and the people management relationship in delivering and implementing a software solution. And those were just the two things that like hooked me from day one. And just absolutely loved every second of it. When I first started at Analytics 8 7 years ago, I came in as a staff consultant. So I was entry level when I came in through the door. And a lot of my day to day was just hands on keyboard developing applications in tandem with our customers, kind of going through business requirement sessions. And it was just so unique and cool to produce something as far as like a data visualization report, an analytics solution that I knew that they were using to kind of impact and effectuate change within their organizations. Like it's super unique to build something of value, kind of turn it over to your end customer and seeing it in action. And that's what really just kind of hooked me. And it's why I'm still here. It's why I'm still doing it. It's why I love what I do. Just kind of seeing like the tangible impact of the solutions that we build as a firm, in the hands of our customers. Like that's really impactful to actually see how your work product is kind of just developing in the field, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. I had dinner with somebody, a really good friend this week, and we were just talking about how, especially early on in your career, sometimes your title or even like your job function might define you. And so you might say like, I'm an engineer or I'm a data analyst or I'm a consultant. And it's funny, to me, the more experience that I've gained and the more diversity that I've had, I've really started to identify myself as like, what's the type of work that I like to do? And so for me, it's really about building. And so I'm really a builder. And so that can be, applied in lots of different ways. It can be internally about building teams and culture with our clients. A lot of times that's building strategy. It's tying strategy to execution. But it's funny, like I'm not classically trained as a builder. but it just is like, I love to be part of organizing the chaos. And so as you were talking about program management and project management, even the ability to visualize and see that product, I mean, that just resonates with me. Again, I think a lot of us are stepping away from maybe what was identified as a title in a business function and now starting to tap into like, what's my real strength and superpower, and what's the work that I ultimately want to do? And it sounds like you're really able to step into that space.
Yeah, and I think, in particular to Analytics 8 and just kind of the way my career's progressed there, they allowed for a lot of different avenues for me to branch out. So like my functional title when I first came in through the door was staff consultant, but it's funny, I was talking with a consultant about this earlier today. I think it's just kind of the flexibility to wear a lot of different hats and kind of like they gave me room to take risks and fail and basically try and find things that worked. And if they didn't work, I could effectively pivot. And I think a lot of that kind of required stepping outside kind of the constraints of your day-to-day job role, and really kind of, building your own internal knowledge base outside of your day-to-day work. I think that was super important in my career progression. Just taking every opportunity where I could kind of branch out outside of my day-to-day project work, and really make the most of it. That has been some of the most impactful real world experience that I've had. And it really kind of helped build up to the position that I'm in today. Like I still lean on a lot of the lessons when I first came in through the door, just kind of like getting the opportunity to try something new, seeing if it works out. If it fails, it can kind of pivot and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. So, whether you're part of a small firm or maybe you're joining a larger firm, there's always that opportunity to step outside of your job, maybe role and responsibility. And like you said, test, try, and learn. So I'd just be curious on, could you share just maybe an example or two where that learning was really, fundamental in terms of like shaping the direction or even the way that you lead teams today? Because sometimes it's easy to say, let's identify something outside of your job responsibility or role, but there's usually a key lesson or a learning that really can be applied and others can learn from. So just curious on, what would be an example or two of just a key learning as you were taking risks early on in your career?
Yeah, so at the beginning of 2020, our CEO wanted to conceive of this idea of practices internally. So basically technology-focused areas within the organization where individuals kind of led that functional area. So he approached me to lead the Microsoft practice. And at first I was kind of resistant to the idea because I'd never led a practice, never built a practice, have no idea really where to start. There's no blueprint. There's not necessarily like a laid out pathway to do so. So it kind of required me to step outside of my comfort zone and do something that I didn't really know what I was doing. So in doing so, kind of just had to figure out like what are the first couple of steps in building like this new internal functional area within the organization. And you quickly realize what works and what doesn't. And you become a lot better at kind of prioritizing like where I should spend my time and what really isn't necessarily what necessarily doesn't deserve the attention. So it was a pretty unique learning experience, kind of like building that like sub function within the organization. And that had a lot of bearing on the role that I assumed at the beginning of 2021, which was leading our analytics service line. So it's a much wider portfolio, but the fundamentals still remain the same. Making sure that continuous enablement opportunities are available to our consultants so they're equipped with the skills that they need to deliver that type of project work. Making sure that we have robust technology partnerships, that we're building the right sales methodology, that we can deliver the projects, that we can go into the room with the prospective customer, and when they're asking us about our Microsoft capabilities or any of the other tech stacks that we work with, we can articulate the type of value that we can drive versus another firm. Like really selling, like why should you choose Analytics 8 versus one of our competitors out there? Like building that messaging. So it was a really, really unique opportunity to kind of build a practice from the ground up, and from there kind of take on a little bit more responsibility in a wider ecosystem. But that was hugely important step in my career. Just kind of getting that swing at the plate, getting comfortable with the idea of kind of building a business within the business. And so, I think that's definitely one example for sure that comes to mind.
Great. And that just ties in really well into that concept of entrepreneurship that we talked about. So
Mhm.
that concept of building a business within a business. One of the pieces that I'm just so passionate about with Thought Team is like we want to build the platform for leaders like yourself to step in and say, I want to build the next business unit, the next offering as part of this platform. There's so much about entrepreneurship that seems very interesting when you have that builder's mentality and that responsibility and accountability that comes with it. You can also do that within the context of an organization. And so, maybe even just share a little bit about Analytics 8 and even just the career trajectory or the growth trajectory of that business. Because again, I think that sets a little bit of the table that you and I can start to really step into. Again, like what are some of the real, that balance between accountability and the real accountability that comes with running a business and a business unit, and the opportunity, which provides a lot of growth space for creativity to be able to build diverse teams, to be able to be testing the market, et cetera. So share with a little bit just again the growth trajectory of Analytics 8 and what that's looked like over the last 2 years.
Yeah, so the Analytics 8 that I joined a little over 7 years ago is very different than the Analytics 8 today. And I think when I look back on the growth in particular over the course of the last 2 years, it's really astonishing. I mean, we basically went from 40 people about a year and a half ago to over 100 currently right now. So we are definitely in growth mode. Our mindset is kind of increasing our footprint, our geographical reach, and that's been just so much fun to be a part of. I think I've been a part of organizations that have, contracted. It's way, way more fun to be part of an organization that's definitely like on the upswing and has its eye towards growth. So for me, it's just been a really unique experience to kind of see how we've progressed. When I first joined, from a tech stack perspective, we were doing a lot of work within Click, within Burst, traditional SQL Server integration, Microsoft data warehouse builds. The breadth and depth of what we deliver in terms of services today, like, couldn't be more different when I first came in through the door. Like, we are doing so much more in terms of our service offerings. We've gotten so much more fine-tuned into our specific service lines that it's really unique to see, and it's awesome to just kind of have a seat at the table to help build that out. When I look at it, in a company that's in a growth mode, it affords opportunity for consultants, for people, kind of rank and file, to find those opportunities to build a business within a business. I see a lot of our kind of heavy hitter, senior consultants kind of stepping up to the plate and kind of identifying emerging tech or, recurring trends within our client customer base that they kind of bring to the table, where it's like, hey, this could be a service offering. Like, this could be an avenue of growth for us. And I think the fun part about being a kind of a lean organization in the consulting space is that our leadership really encourages us to bring new ideas to the table. And it doesn't matter what rank you're at. You can be an associate consultant, you could be a managing director. It really doesn't matter. If you have a good idea, you're going to get the ability to kind of air out that good idea, see if it has legs and run with it. And I think it's really important to encourage and mentor junior level staff when they have good ideas that they want to bring to bear, and kind of like foster it, push it along, see if it's going to take shape. Give them the room to fail. I think that's really critically important to people's growth. So within the context of Analytics 8, I think it's been really important over the course of the last year or two, because I myself, in my role, I've definitely had ideas that didn't take shape, that I probably spent too much time focusing on, and then just kind of had to pivot to the next thing. But I was kind of given the room to explore and figure out if this is going to be a good idea, if it's not. And I think that's really important too.
And as you've stepped into the practice lead role, I know for you that was a fairly significant both growth opportunity, but also just a career move. And so as you think about just the learning curve from your previous position of responsibility to where you sit today, like, where would you say is the sharpest or steepest learning curve?
I think it's kind of recognizing that effectuating change is a little bit of a slower burn than you would expect. So I look at it when I first came in as a consultant and I was developing applications. If my client or my customer came to me and said, hey, I want to integrate an additional data source, I want to build like an additional sales report, Me individually, I can knock that out, within a couple of days or a week, turn it around really quickly. Like I could effectuate change extremely fast. It's a little bit of a paradigm shift when you're trying to do it across the organization, where you're trying to go deep into a new specific tech stack or a new service area. There are a lot of things that you need to build up in terms of capabilities to actually have that happen. You have to be able to effectively sell it. You need to have the enablement for the consultants to service that type of work. And then you have to basically, distribute it across the organization and see if it's going to take shape. And it's a much longer burn. So there's a little bit of discomfort, at least for me personally, like I just like to get going and do things immediately. So it was a little bit of an adjustment, like, oh, like it takes time to see these changes take shape. And just kind of living with that discomfort a little bit, it took a little bit. That was definitely a big change, going from just basically like, sure, hands on keyboard, you need this, like I can turn it around, crank it out, versus like a much wider strategic initiative. Like it takes a little bit to take shape and see if it has legs. That's definitely one of the biggest differences for sure.
So as you look at 2021, there's a lot of leaders who just, have voiced to us that it's just been a real challenge. Like there's no playbook for, the business environment, for the real struggles that might be going on personally or at home. And you're just trying to figure out like, how do I both support an exponentially growing business? How do I continue to support the team in meeting them of where they're at, but also, making sure that we can continue to grow together. So I'd be curious on, particularly for your leadership style and just your leadership position within the organization, like where did you see struggle? Where did you, look back and say, man, those were some tough lessons for me learning, as a leader of people?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I committed to like a certain like new service or new technology partnership that didn't take root, but like I articulated to people internally, like, oh, this is going to be like the next big thing, like effectively pivoting on from that. That was always a little bit tough for me, because it's a little bit of credibility, right? Like, oh, this is going to be like the new thing for us, but then it doesn't necessarily turn out that way. Just trying to kind of move on from that. Like that's always been, that was a little bit of a struggle for me personally. I think growing as an organization, especially with the pandemic and just kind of being virtual in nature, that also has its struggles too, right? Like keeping a certain level of like connectivity across the organization. How do you make sure that, the culture remains consistent? When you're not necessarily all in the office or, you're kind of geographically dispersed. So just kind of keeping on top of that. And for me, I, in my people management responsibilities, like I always tried to have a good rapport, or always try to at least like check in with people, see how they're doing, like gut check them. I think it's really important not to necessarily be removed from that as a leader. It gets harder and harder as you kind of move up, that you don't necessarily have all the time in the day to kind of devote to those like, one-off conversations, but checking in with people, either if it's on Slack, seeing what they're working on, just trying to like build a continuity in relationships. I think that's really, really important as a leader, just to kind of show that you're a regular person.
Yeah, one of the feedback that we often get from our clients is, we do have an orientation towards relationships first. And many consulting firms might say that. If you're a service-based organization, everybody says relationships matter. For us, our day-to-day actions support that. It's like, we really do look at, like, we're running alongside leaders, we're co-designing with them, we're in the space, like we're in it. We're here to support you. We're also here to really accelerate your growth. And so whether that's individuals, whether that's teams, or whether it's large organizations, the ability for us to be in it and in it with them, it's a real partnership. And it's also the work that I love to do. So, I don't necessarily need to be the subject matter expert. I might have a strong perspective. I might have ideas on what needs to get done. The way that I see and where I'm at my best is when I'm that guide. I'm that guider of the process. I have the ability to create the space. I have the ability to ask thoughtful questions, but like, I'm here to support Kevin. I'm here to support you and your team. I'm here to support you as an individual leader. And to me, again, that relationship piece is a real differentiator. A lot of organizations they might still look at the service offering. They might look at the tactics, but again, in this time and space where people are looking for connection, when you're virtual. It's like you've got to put a premium on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to treat your employees like cogs or anything. Like, you want to make sure that there is like a personal relationship there. Like, you want them to wake up in the morning and, want to log on and work, and, feel good about what they're producing. And I think a lot of that is, really trying to be proactive and building the organization as a place that like really values their contribution, really values their voice. Because people did that for me when I was coming up, and I appreciated that so much. It was so instrumental to my own career growth. So from my standpoint, like, that's absolutely something that like I want to pay forward. As a leader, I think it's really important not to lose sight of where you came from when you were coming up. So that's kind of the mindset that I like to, go into meetings with. Trying to give everybody as much time as I possibly can when I ask for it. I don't want to like wall myself off. Like, I've worked at places before where leaders were kind of like, I guess, segmented away from the rest of the organization. It's almost kind of like an aura. Like, they're so far removed. You don't talk to them unless like you need to talk to them. Like, I don't like that one bit. There's no authenticity to it. So I think it's kind of important to lead from the aspect of, building good relationships, solid working relationships with the people underneath.
Great. Well, let's shift a little bit from the people side and the team side to even starting to leverage data for you to be an effective practice lead, and even how you work with your clients. Big data or data has a lot of different connotations. I think we've all got our own interpretation of what that means. There's also a lot of leaders who aren't interested or aren't used to stepping into using data to inform decisions or having an engaging way to really interact with that data set. So, just curious for you, let's maybe start with you as a practice lead, and then we'll talk about your clients and what you're seeing in the industry. Like, how are you leveraging data to really be an effective practice lead today at Analytics 8?
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, just why it's important and like why you should be leveraging it. It just really does come down to speed. I mean, when I look at it, like, the velocity in which an organization can make a decision is inherently tied to the data that they have, and that data needs to be accessible and it needs to be there. And that is the proposition of data analytics. That's why it's so valuable. I think for us internally at Analytics 8, we adopted like the same methodology that we apply to our customers. Like, we built our own internal data warehouse. We built our own internal reporting where, if we want to look up, what our utilization rate is across our consultants, if we want to look at all of our open sales opportunities, what's in the pipeline, what our project budget is, we have that all at our disposal because we effectively want to make data-driven decisions, just like we build for our customer base. And I'm in those applications every single day. Everybody in the leadership team has visible eyes on it. Everybody on down at every level of the organization has access to that, because it's important to have that level of transparency too as well. So for us, we definitely use it in terms of making our strategic decisions, over the course of each quarter. It's definitely an asset that we have at our disposal.
Yeah, we actually had a team retrospective this week, and it's one of my favorite ceremonies. And one of the comments was, it's great to see us taking our services and even our approach with our clients, and it's what we do internally.
Yeah.
And so there's such power in that shared experience, your ability to say, like, we're committed to that same process. We're committed to that same practice. We can also accelerate your ability to adopt some of these practices that truly will be a differentiator for your business. And so again, like that eating your own dog food, the ability to step into your own work just becomes really powerful when you're sitting alongside a leader, like you said, to talk about how analytics can really be an unlock for them in terms of speed.
Yeah, and it's funny, we constructed that as a regular client project like we normally would. Like, we would have like project checkpoints and like budget burn downs and everything. Even though it's an internal project, like, we still structured it like we normally would, like an external facing client project. So it kind of brought like that uniqueness to it, treating it like a real project and not just kind of a one-off thing. Really putting to practice what we preach. So it was pretty fun, and it's awesome to see the utility that it's had across the organization too.
Well, you talked about speed really being a differentiator, and if I look at the market, change is growing faster than ever. Whether you're looking at internal change market shifts, customer segmentation, positioning, all of that stuff. It just feels like the world is moving so fast, much faster than it was 2 years ago, arguably even faster than it was a year ago. So, what are you seeing in the market, and what are your customers looking for that might be different today than it was 2 years ago?
Yeah, it's really the ubiquity of cloud solutions today. So with the shift from kind of on-premise solutions to the cloud just enables you to kind of adopt solutions a lot easier. It's super easy to just log in, create an account on Azure, provision a Power BI license, and kind of, even if you don't really know what you're doing, you can kind of get up and running relatively quickly. And you're working within an enterprise grade stack, like right out of the gate. Like anybody can do it right now in terms of setting up an account, provisioning a license. So the barrier to entry is extremely low. Versus what it used to be, where you'd have to go through an enterprise software sales rep, go through a sales cycle, go through the tool selection, all that. And you still have to do that, but it's a lot easier to pilot solutions, kind of test what works and what doesn't. So as a result, it's funny when I go into sales cycles, I no longer really have to sell the merits of data analytics like I used to, like 5 years ago, where somebody might not really know what a BI tool is or what a data warehouse is. Like their buyers are a lot more informed. Like they know what the value of a data analytics solution is, more so than they would a couple of years ago. So that's a huge differentiation point. And I think people are definitely just interacting with data more and more. It's definitely becoming less of kind of like a paper and pencil proposition and making decisions, and actually kind of having hard and fast data at your disposal, and really seeing the value in it. So cloud solutions for sure have definitely been a battering ram in terms of just really driving adoption for data analytics solutions, at least as far as I've seen.
And where would you say that the Analytics 8 really differentiates themselves? So there's lots of consulting services, and whether you do it internally or externally, like where do you really see yourselves as truly differentiated in the market?
So I think the differentiator has always been for me that we have experience across the entire data analytics lifecycle. So the way we're kind of segmented as a firm and our service offerings, it's data strategy, data management, and analytics. Data management basically being strategy consulting for firms that might not necessarily have a technology roadmap in place. We're kind of giving them counsel in terms of what the best of breed solution is that they should adopt, what the potential pain points are, what an implementation plan would look like, and that in turn kind of goes into data management, which is the actual backend build, kind of building data warehouses, the ingestion, replication, transformation aspects to it, and then front-end analytics, which is my service line, which is basically front-end reporting, advanced analytics, and data science. But having a viewpoint into each of those different areas gives you such a comprehensive story in terms of like what the recurring pain points are for customers. And what are the common themes that we've seen? We're not just segmented to one specific area within one specific tech stack, and that's our view of the world. I think at Analytics 8, just having experience across the entire data analytics lifecycle, there is a lot of valuable insight that we can drive that isn't going to be tethered to just one single solution, one single tech stack, anything like that. And I think that it makes our value proposition unique in that we're going to bring the best of breed solution to our customer that works for our customer. It's not going to be like any sort of hidden agenda. There are a lot of firms out there that are tethered to one tech stack in particular or one approach in particular. We definitely work to find the best solution for our customers. And that's something that I've really appreciated. I've been here for 7 years. Obviously, professional services and consulting, people tend to cycle out relatively quickly, or that's just kind of the norm. But we have longevity. People tend to stick, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way we approach our project work.
Great. So if you're looking to grow and you're talking to team members, let's even forecast out 18 months. What is it you're sharing in terms of the story, the trajectory of Analytics 8? And even just, today we have these three, service lines. We're really focused in this space, but we're really excited about maybe some big bets that are being placed, or even just where you see the marketplace. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about let's look out 18 months. We're sitting here in this same space. What are we talking about?
Yeah, I think there is going to be a lot of moves within the GCP and Google space in particular. Right now, I think Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services have a lot of ubiquity in terms of cloud solutions. Google is making a lot of ground up. So the GCP stack working within BigQuery, Looker on the front end, like that's going to be, when we're talking 18 months, like that's going to have like all the growth trajectory in the world in terms of services. DBT is another that has just so much room to grow. We've seen it really take off. It's an excellent transformation tool. It's definitely in use within a lot of the best of breed data engineering stacks we bring to the table. Snowflake is another. And Snowflake, obviously, with IPO, they're already public. I think there's a lot out there. It's a great solution, and I think it still has a ton of legs. Databricks is another. We definitely see a lot of room to grow within Databricks over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. But those are just a couple that kind of quickly come top of mind, just as far as like technology vendors that we've definitely seen a lot of growth and a lot more room to grow over the course of the next year or so.
One of the areas that I'm very interested in from the Thought Team side, we have a really strong practice called portfolio management. And so in that way, it's really starting to tie your strategy to your projects, to your resources, and how to really tie strategy to execution. A lot of times that's sitting with finance and with HR, with the project managers, the dev managers, but it's all very disjointed, or there's different ways of the Rubik's Cube that they're starting to look at it. What I've come to find is it's one thing to have the data structured correctly. It's another thing to build visualization on top of it. I think there's a really unique opportunity to also teach leaders to become business leaders, not just functional leaders. So for example, if you're a product manager or you're a business line manager and your job is to both set strategy and make big decisions, you want to have the ability to look at historical information or forecasts. You want the ability to engage in maybe a weekly or monthly set of visuals that are going to help you make big decisions. So curious on, as you're working with your clients, how do you all approach the ability to coach or upskill leaders who maybe aren't used to having to step into these tool sets or aren't used to having to make these big decisions, and they need to be engaging in the data sets to better inform them?
Yeah, I think when you look at it from the lens of our data strategy service line, a lot of what we do when we come in for that initial project work is just interviewing technical and business stakeholders to really kind of understand, like, what are the high value components that could be solved with a data analytics solution, and trying to find like a mechanism or an implementation plan to get there. So a lot of it kind of goes down to finding those high value, high feasibility projects. Like if there is a specific sales reporting use case or product management reporting use case that we know is going to have a ton of utility across the organization and get a lot of executive level buy-in, then let's lead with that use case first in implementation. Like that's how we're going to approach it. It's so critical in an implementation phase to do it right the first time and get that buy-in and see the immediate value.
Build a reputation.
Not just build subsequent use cases down the line. I think there's always a gravitation to, hammer out the most complex use case and, something that's going to have enormous benefit, but it's going to be like really technically challenging. Trying to walk back the customer from that to like, let's find like, the path to least resistance to getting the most value initially out of the gate, and then build towards those complex use cases. Like getting the buy-in first, that's what effectively builds like a really impactful data analytics program. Otherwise, could potentially turn into expensive shelfware down the line if you don't do it right. Because at the end of the day, right, it's just a software license. I think you need to have the right people and process in order for it to be successful too. Like you can't lose sight of that. Like technology is just not going to be the be all end all solution to everything. You have to have practitioners who know what they're doing. You have to have a place to scale it out.
Yeah, we've actually started to really share some of the story about the cultural change and, like you said, the people and process change that come with this. It's beyond just the ability to have capabilities and to interact with the data set. You're really changing behaviors and mindsets, and it's people and process. So it's almost like if you're leading with that solving the business problem, if you're talking about business change, transformation change, culture change, it's supported by these tool sets. It's not led by these tool sets. So again, like if you come into it with individuals who maybe aren't as interested in talking about data sets and visualization, I just want to offer that to all of you. To me, it's like you want to solve the immediate business problem. You want to build some reputation and some momentum. And then really you want to start focusing on the people and process side to really, be differentiated. You can build this highly complex, highly comprehensive solution. It's not going to stick. You've got to find ways to really make it interactive and iterative throughout this entire build process.
No, absolutely. 100%. And the other thing that we always kind of recommend is, integrating analytics, within an operational workflow or an operational workflow within analytics, like placing analytics within a point of need. So kind of peppering it in like wherever possible. Yeah, sometimes if that means like embedding a report in SharePoint, so the person's going to be more likely to use it and engage it because it's something that they kind of go into every single day, and it somehow becomes a part of their process flow. Obviously adoption is a huge component to analytics. Like that is one of the metrics for success. Like how much are people using it? So trying to integrate it into people's day to day, like that definitely helps to expedite that.
Great. All right, so let's come back up and just take a look at really what we covered. To me, it's just again really exciting to connect with you. You and I shared a bit of our own individual stories of you started out in one career, you moved into a different. I spent most of my career in financial services and tech, but I'm not a technologist. I'm not a finance person. To me, again, we're in this like unique era of business where there's a real opportunity to start to look at whether it's intrapreneurship or entrepreneurship, the ability to test, try, and learn, to recognize opportunity, to be opportunity generating, and then to be able to balance both the opportunity, but also the responsibility of what that means. You can have big ideas, but it also has to be backed up by execution. You've got to be willing to take risk. You've got to be willing to learn. And you've got to be willing to be humble at times where it's like, wow, this was a lot harder than I expected. Yeah. And so to me, again, I think all of us can relate to just hearing your story, our ability to step in, to see these opportunities. And it just sounds like Analytics 8 from a culture standpoint, from a business trajectory, and even alignment to the type of work that you want to be doing, it's there. And so I'm really excited to see when we sit back, 18 months from now and start to talk about what this looks like, just to hear about, again, the growth and the learnings that have come from your journey.
No, absolutely. And, it's exciting times. I can't wait to see what it's going to look like, a year or two from now. But yeah, I really appreciate the time today. And it was definitely a fun conversation.
Great. Well, we're going to end this on a lightning round. So last week, Amanda had led a lightning round, and I feel like that set a new precedent. So I don't have necessarily any questions that are going to really throw you, but we're going to do the lightning round. It's going to be top ahead, one or two thoughts, as we go through this. So first question, Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay, good. Do you identify as an artist or an operator?
Operator.
There shouldn't be a right or wrong answer, but I feel like you got two right so far. What's your favorite consulting jargon?
Oh, that's such a good one. Circle back or boil the ocean are like my two favorite. Oh man.
What's a current book or podcast or movie that you're consuming?
I just finished reading Persepolis, book 2. It's kind of half comic book, half novel. It's basically about the Iranian Revolution and just the young girls kind of experience living through that. Really good. Highly recommend it. My wife got it for me for Christmas.
Great. What's a mantra or a word for 2022?
Cool. That's a good one. I don't know. Get after it. It's really fun. We got a lot to do and we got to do it fast.
Yeah, I like it. All right, last one. Who would you say is your biggest cheerleader and champion?
Biggest cheerleader and champion. Well, at home, definitely my wife and definitely my baby daughter. yeah, like they're the best.
Mm.
And then honestly, internally, Analytics 8, in the work side, just everybody on the leadership team. Like I can't say enough about them. It's been awesome working with them. Like they're sharp individuals, no ego. It makes working super easy when everybody's like on board and supportive of a common goal. So yeah, I think from the work side, definitely like my colleagues, can't say enough about them.
That's great. Yeah, I'll say for us in the last couple of months, it's just been such a reminder of how important that support in the community is. And so even having a chance as you're getting after it, as you're in that build space and there's just so much to do, the ability to still pause and be in it with them and to acknowledge what they've meant to you in terms of the journey, the support, whatever their actions have been that have helped get you to this point. So again, really appreciate your time creating the space with us. Really appreciate you being part of this community, and thanks for sharing your story today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
Great. What I'd like to do is talk about next week. Hard to believe, episode 74. So 74 next week, we've got Susanna Dellinger. Susanna is the founder of Bright Beauty Collective. We've had the opportunity to be partnering with Susanna over the last couple of weeks. She's got a really interesting story to tell. From her days as a corporate executive to stepping back to being a mom to really now stepping into this new phase or this new chapter of her life. She is on fire. There's so much for her to offer in terms of her story and her lessons learned. What we're really excited about is the power of the collective. So in addition to her building this business, there's a real focus on community through the collective. And so we couldn't be more excited for her to be at the table with us. So with that, this ends my first time again in the captain's chair for Navigating Now. This certainly is not my last because I'm actually hosting next week. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, we thank the community, those that tuned in on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thank you. Really excited not just to tune into this episode, but to continue to pour into and invest in each other. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.